Hey there, welcome to episode 101 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at about 1:45 p.m. on Friday, January 31st, 2025, the end of the month. On to the next one. Today we're going to go over some lacks and gaps. These are things that I have identified over the last couple of years that I think are missing. I call them ecosystem liabilities, missing from our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, either missing or could be better. So I wrote a document. Well, let me get to the summary. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So lacks and gaps. If you've never listened in on the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, quick rundown, cafe with two F's, taken from Cafe Centro, the coffee shop in South Park in San Francisco, very near what used to be the AT&T ballpark, now the Oracle ballpark. I finally checked that. I think I kind of knew that, but when I was there, it was the AT&T ballpark. So in the context of visiting Cafe Centro, I will stand by my reference to the AT&T ballpark. Neither is there anymore. AT&T ballpark no longer. Now the Oracle ballpark. Cafe Centro shut down about, I think it was over a year ago. It was just over a year ago, I think. That's unfortunate. It's where startups started. It's where Twitter got its start. Jack Dorsey was sitting there with his laptop coding away on what would become Twitter. There are many other such stories, probably none so detrimental to society, but there it is. So I've said for a couple of years now that the greater Vegas area needs a Cafe Centro or several, a place where actual startups start. Doesn't have to be a Twitter or the next whatever. Could be anything, but a place where people converge and ideate and maybe go from there. So Cafe with two F's, Genius, taken from the Genius lunches that we used to have back in the downtown project days. The Genius lunches were just random people hanging around, friend of a friend type connections. Hey, we're going to go to lunch. You want to, if you want to come, you want to invite someone. And it would just be a smattering of people working on this or that. Hey, what's going on? A little, not quite gossip, more just word of mouth update. What are you guys working on? How's your project coming? Etc. So kind of casual pulse of the scene, so to speak. I was never part of Downtown Project myself. I was more of a spectator, but I was always around. I had seats. I had box seats. I don't know if they were in the front row. And then impresarios with two S's. That's the people that are making things happen. They are entrepreneurs themselves. They're innovators. They're doing it. They're making it go. And so ideally, we'll talk to more of them or people that are in the ecosystem universe. Does that even make sense? But so most of this content where it's just me talking probably sounds a lot like my other audio projects, but these are aimed at or intended to elevate the ecosystem to re-bolster the impresario terrain, make it a little bit better, I suppose, or hope to, or just generally elevate the ecosystem for entrepreneurs and innovators and maybe those doing both. So there we go. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, that was not a cut, by the way. I just changed topics. Hopefully you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes. The show notes are a summary, my name, the summary of the episode, which I will read to you, and then the links for today's episode, which today I've only included the two shameless self-promotion links that if you have heard this audio program before, they may sound familiar. You may have heard them before. So all that said, I have potted down my microphone, so hopefully I'm not clipping. I was noticing my previous episodes were a little hot on the audio in. So we'll see how today goes. And hopefully if it's too quiet, I will never hear from anyone because you will not have heard from me. I crack myself up. On that note, let's get started. And again, I'm in previous episodes, I was indeed referring to the AT&T ballpark. Hopefully no confusion. It is Oracle ballpark today. The summary. In February of 2023, it was actually the end of February, 27, I finished up a draft of a document I call Vegas Lax. That's the file name. The title is Ecosystem Liabilities. Based on what I learned in my time in Silicon Valley from 1993 to 2001, and then 2005 to 2013. And my observations here in the greater Vegas area over the decade that I have lived and worked here. Now I think it's 11 years, roughly. The first year is a little dodgy, right? Let's see how that list looks today in the context of Initiative 2025, which we first talked about in an episode a few weeks ago. So if you want to scroll back in time and pick up there, or you'll catch on. Basically, we're going to try to make our ecosystem better this year. The links, as usual, no obligation to spend any money here, despite the name of the first one, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo is a profile page on that website. It has links to all of my audio projects and my favorite coffee beans, some GitHub repository links, a little bit of background about me, and at the very top of the profile, a link to the posts section. I may have been saying places or something. For some reason, I didn't go back and check, but posts, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo in the post section, posts, plural. They enable the direct posting and hosting of audio and video. So I've been uploading micro episodes, I call them, Buy Me an Update, available exclusively on buymeacoffee.com. It's under 5 minutes. It's a rundown of the previous week's audio programs and what's coming up. Little micro announcements and updates and so on. So check that out if you want. As well, Ko-fi.com/DanHugo. That's ko-fi.com/DanHugo. That is text updates and other engagement. Both of these platforms are used by content creators, open source developers, anyone working on projects or creative works to help connecting with their audience, their fans, their consumers, their users, however you view yourself. So there you go. Those are the same every week. And I have no additional links because we're going to go through this document, which I never published, by the way. Why did I never publish it? Because I never thought it was done. And now at this point, I think it should just be like the basis of a new version. So I would take this as a point of discussion and then kind of start the next version of this. Ecosystem Liabilities 2, The Wrath of Meh. So yeah, where are we today? And then I'm going to jump into the document. I'm going to get some water first because apparently need some water. Stay hydrated, Vegas. So where are we today? Let's run through this list of items and see how things are moving along. So we'll go through the document. It's 15 pages. I'm not going to read every word, obviously. Well, not obviously, but I'm not going to, I promise. I did write it based on my own experiences and observations, coupled with the discussions we had as part of the first cohort of the Genius Roundtable. Roundtable being one word, as it is. I have spoken in at least one episode previously about where the first cohort probably fell short of what we could have done and what my hopes were for giving this a try. Hopefully a second cohort this year will be more productive with more useful outcomes, plural, more participation in outcomes, and so on. So yeah, I'm looking for version 2 to be an improvement. Pardon me, I had to pause, and I still need to get some water. Jeez. So the Vegas Lax list is not necessarily complete. So the things I run through today, these are not the end all and be all. They're not even necessarily correct. They're a point of discussion in future cohorts as we get that going for this year, or in other contexts, other discussions, whenever even one or two items might come up and as part of another discussion, etc. So this is definitely separable. So it's not intended to be like an all self-contained, how-to document or anything like this. Or it could just be for a presentation and contemplation here in this episode today and in this audio program in general. But more inputs and analysis would be a great thing. So again, I would like this to be not even the basis of pondering, especially in the context of the Genius Roundtable in the second cohort, hopefully coming soon as part of Initiative 2025. So on that note, I'm going to pause, I'm going to get some water, and then we're going to go through these items. And again, not going to read all 15 pages, absolutely not. But I'll go through what the item was, and then we'll see what's up. Hang on. And we're back. Okay, hopefully I can make it through this. I've talked about my efforts to make my voice work a little bit better. So unfortunately, I just did that thing. Probably should have waited another maybe half hour, but we'll see. We'll see how this goes. It's still an experimental work in progress. So here we go. There's I'll touch on this. There's some terms, and I've talked about this previously. The entrepreneur is someone who's either starting or pursuing starting a business. So I don't really keep it to tech startups, and I don't think it's healthy to do that. So overly focusing on technology startups being the next Twitter, for example, I don't think that builds on the strengths of the culture that the Greater Vegas area has in place today. So I think any entrepreneur is an entrepreneur, or someone with the innate character qualities to be an entrepreneur. So there's entrepreneurial thinking and so on. An ecosystem is similar to the biological use of the term. Existence and change, growth or otherwise, over time of the inhabitants of the ecosystem is also important. So just like the environment, the resources available, the weather, etc. So the inhabitants are part of and benefit from and interact with the ecosystem and the other inhabitants. So the other people, the other startups, entrepreneurs, and innovators. There's a homeostatic status quo disrupted frequently by chaos. Excuse me. Like a hurricane can come through a particular ecosystem, or a flood, or a fire, or any other such things. Entrepreneurial ecosystem then has some of the pillars that I've described previously: education, or talent pool. So a population of people that are in. I would underscore that this is basically the culture. A culture of entrepreneurialism, a culture of innovation. So you have educational resources, you have mentorship, you have people that are generally interested and places to turn that interest into action or to sort of fan that flame. So I'm gonna just call it. I'm gonna call out the education and the talent pool as like a part of the culture, but these four pillars don't necessarily have to stand separately. So. Because the community growth medium also is kind of a culture thing, but it's also it's a little bit broader. So if you combine education and community, quote unquote community, small c. So maybe I would change. See, again, this is from 2023. So it's coming up on 2 years old, end of February 2023. So you need a talent pool. You need the culture that makes the talent pool want to like collaborate or try new ideas and so on. The notion that, I don't know if we can do that. Let's try it. Instead of, I don't know if we can do that. Let's not. Government and support from legislation and regulation to create and enable or otherwise provide or develop infrastructure and again, feed that culture, help with awareness and discovery and so on. So the government is sort of a foundational element. I don't know that it makes sense for government to participate too much, more enable, like let the startups start. Don't try too hard to create something that isn't there, so to speak, but provide that base, access to capital and funds to grow and innovate and so on. That's pretty standard. So the way I described it in the ecological analog sense was that education and connections to education and the talent pool and so on, I called that the soil. Government support and legislation regulation was the air we breathe. I think today I would probably switch those, maybe, if we go with government as the base or the thing we're going to build on. So switch those. Access to capital is the water. And the community is the flora and the fauna. So that's the plants and animals that make up an ecosystem. So the tendency of those inhabitants of the ecosystem to come together, to collaborate, to turn ideas into action and so on, is a cultural element. It's sort of the tendency of the ecosystem to do something. Maybe that's more along the lines of the climax community. A community is an emergent group of individuals with similar interests, ideals, goals, challenges, experiences, geographical proximity, and so on. A community may contain, intersect with, or combine with other communities, e.g. a community of military veterans, which is a large community here in Vegas, if it is a single community, and a community of educators are ideally not exclusionary and not parasitic. So that is, they're not going to keep to themselves, and they're also not going to try to compete in a zero-sum game. So, both can help each other, etc. So a climax community is one or more emerged communities which as a whole continue to balance each other for stable existence within an ecosystem. So a climax community is, there might be one, but in a city, in reality, there could be more than one. The ecosystem of a desert is a desert. It's difficult to have a rainforest and a desert together, but you could say that you have a city in a desert. Those are two climax communities. Once you leave the boundaries of civilization, if you will, you start encroaching on a different climax community, a different habitat for animals, reptiles, mammals, birds, etc. So in the context of the pillars, I would say that the community will have a sort of a culture, but the environment has a culture. So the education and the bridges to and from education and the talent pool, those are people, but they're still the resource. So yeah, I got to work on that a little bit. I think I have to clarify exactly, just for the sake of argument, what the pillars really are. And I could break it down into more than 4 pillars, and then it gets a little bit more complicated in the pursuit of simplification, perhaps. Insular is a term I use frequently for the purposes of this presentation and conversation, if it comes up. I don't know if I want to get into this much detail. A common term, insular, is the most generic meaning. So isolated like an island rather than less than complementary meaning. So some people will say isolated. Oh, everybody's here is so isolated. I think isolated is a little bit more proactive, like you are keeping to yourself. Insular is that groups, like I mentioned, veterans and educators, teachers, those groups are not avoiding each other, but they may not necessarily interact with each other. So they just tend to be distinct when in fact they could almost certainly benefit from some form of collaboration. And that's true of any, I'm just picking those two sort of, I'll say simple groups. Like I'm just labeling veterans and teachers. That's pretty broad. But if they are insular, then they probably keep to themselves. They probably go, and from what I understand, the veterans groups here in the greater Vegas area do tend to keep to themselves. It's veterans meeting with other veterans. So I've literally been told, we just don't, we wait for people to come to us. So that's one approach. And I don't know that teachers are going to other meetups and so on, unless you have a teacher who's a veteran. And so those are the opportunities to make those other bridges, right? So those are just some terms. And so let's get into what I said was missing or lacking. And so now we can look at whether there are some gaps now, but that maybe some things are in place. So I broke it into cultural and structural. There's cultural. I'll start with cultural. So everywhere versus here. So I'm going to say that we are rationalizing our local ecosystem strengths and weaknesses, and we could be looking at everywhere. Like, where do we fit into the larger, the super ecosystem, I guess. So we need so essentially the Vegas culture is not the Silicon Valley culture, if you want to be simple about it. So we can't just automatically say, oh, we're just like we can do anything we want. moving a city and its culture in a different direction is kind of tricky. I always make the climax community reference, which is converting a desert to a city is not something you just do. You don't just do it in a year, right? You can do temporary things, but you cannot really construct a livable and sustainable city in the middle of a desert or in the middle of a forest. You got to be cutting down trees. You got to be bringing in water, depending on which one you're starting with. And here's the deal. If you stop putting energy into an ecosystem that had a climax community, right? This is a desert. So if you stop bringing in water, if you stop paving roads, if you stop running air conditioning, if you stop doing human things and you just let it go, it's going to return to being a desert, and the habitat will encroach on the human parts, right? So yeah, I think there's a tendency here to believe the hype from a cultural standpoint. From a structural standpoint, very similar, right? You can't just snap your fingers and turn an entire population and all the infrastructure that's here into something else. So I think that's still a problem. Communication, or as I often refer to it as mokusatsu, which is a Japanese term, meaning it's essentially kill someone with silence. Don't answer, ghost. This is still a problem in Vegas, and it will be detrimental to any desire to be a place of innovation if there's always a click system. There are people who will determine whether they want to talk to you if there's something in it for them. And similar, now I'm not saying this doesn't happen everywhere, but it certainly happens in Vegas, and I think it's a problem. I think it's a huge problem. Discovery and super connecting also continue to be problems. Now, discovery is just so you can figure out what's going on. A community calendar, for example, just some way. Meetup.com doesn't really work for that, not well enough. Eventbrite, LinkedIn, other event publication schemes. I've seen LinkedIn events just not work. They're difficult to discover. LinkedIn is by design a graph. It's a network graph. So you don't necessarily see events unless you go looking for them, unless somebody that you know has shared it or is attending. So the LinkedIn scheme is a little bit tricky. You can still find the events, but you kind of have to know to look for them. It's not ideal. Meetup.com, that's just a mess. I actually attended one of their engineering meetings that they had open to the public. Absolute chaos. And then they were bought out last year, I think it was. They were bought out by another company, and I don't see it getting any better. So relying on Meetup is disappointing. Not to mention that if we are going to be an innovation hub, or we tell people we should be able to build our own solutions that really work, not cave in and just, why don't we just use WordPress? I guess then we don't have to worry about innovation. We can just be integration. We don't have to do anything unique or purpose built. And then super connecting is also a problem. This comes down to the insular or cultural components, or maybe gaps in those. Super connecting is where you you try to connect to multiple people, 2 people or more, where there's nothing in it for you. Like, oh, you should talk to so and so. Oh, should I give you money? No. I think you two would do some good stuff together. There's nothing in it for me whatsoever, unless you consider the very long tail where you two being successful adds a little bit of something to the community at large. The ecosystem is elevated a little bit. Maybe down the road, something that you do ends up benefiting me or whatever. So this is super connecting attitude in action. If it's, hey, let me connect you. If you pay me as a service, I'll help you with your social media outreach and whatever. That's connecting with people as a service and with a client. Or even if you go to meetups where you have to pay a fee to attend, to be a part of a club or some other network list or something, that's not the same. We're on page 6 already of 15, so we're good. So that's mokusatsu, by the way. And that is a huge problem that's easily solved here in Vegas. And that's where the second startup scene comes into play, and where the community calendar, making it easier to discover and connect, and then instilling in people who are really interested in building I don't like looking at it as building, but being a part of a healthy, vibrant, and evolving ecosystem for entrepreneurs and innovators. Return the email, return the phone call, right? Talk to people, communicate. Don't leave people hanging because the message you're sending it is, oh, there's nothing in it for me, so why should I bother? That is not healthy. And so that continues to be a huge problem. But as some sort of a discovery mechanism so that people know that there is a thing. For some time it was, oh, talk to this person and that person and go to this and that. And so it was sort of a tribal knowledge, they call it, where you kind of had to know, you had to happen upon someone who happened to know who you should go talk to if you want to be a startup person here in Vegas. That's not good. There's a drive to excellence. This one is highly subjective. If you look around and you say, oh, okay, so this is a smart city. What makes it a smart city? Well, I just gave a couple of examples as far as connection and communication and insular groups and so on. So an excellent startup city, smart city, innovation hub, any place that thinks it's going to be the next Silicon Valley or whatever that even means, you should be able to look around and say, oh yeah, okay, that's some cutting edge there. That's some high tech, or that's some innovative thinking. It doesn't always have to be tech, by the way. So just smart ways of doing things or enabling smart ways of doing things. Self-driving cars are very popular here because of some FAA test site plans that were in place from a decade ago. So that has led to just driverless vehicles and drones and all sorts of things operating here in Vegas. That's still technology, but that should be a point of like, oh, look, that's something you don't see every day. Nobody driving that car. The loop is not a great thing. Our public transit system to get around, not a great thing. We don't communicate well across languages. We still focus on our census data in a city with a county, with a Clark County where Las Vegas is located. The greater Vegas area is about 2.4 million people. I haven't checked in the last few months, but it's somewhere in there. Under 2.5 million people, maybe, somewhere in there. We get approximately 40 million visitors to the greater Vegas area every year. So, should we look at census data or should we look at visitor demographic data? Unfortunately, from a government perspective, they look at census data and they say, okay, English and Spanish are the two most frequently spoken languages. So there we go. What about those 40 million visitors? Do they speak other languages? Absolutely. So our smart city could be fully localized, fully internationalized so that it can be localized for visitors. Hey, I'm visiting Vegas and I only speak Korean. I only speak Polish. I only speak fill in the blank. The technology exists. The technology to do it exists. The interest and the understanding of the value proposition may not, but the outcome, it could be human translators or it could be AI technologies or it could be somewhere in between. But the outcome is not going to be someone saying, oh, look at all this technology. It's going to be, hey, this city speaks my language. So the value that really is something. There have been efforts by, I will not say the name of the person. I will not point them out directly. But there are some attempts at a community calendar style of thing. This is not even me saying this. These are other people saying, oh, it's just absolutely garbage. It's not useful. So the attempt is interesting, but merely showing up is not going to cut it. Woody Allen suggested that 80%, whatever, it's not going to do it. So excellence should be a goal. Now, I don't need to put the person down, so I'm not saying who they are or not pointing a finger. But at the same time, if you're going to put the energy into that, you should take criticism and you should try to improve it. Minimally viable, not quite, just doesn't cut it. It's not a drive to excellence. And there are countless examples of this. And I would point to someone who wants to be a restaurant owner, a successful restaurant owner, who wants to serve the food that they love to their customers and have them love their food also. If you think about a grandmother type character who wants the grandkids to be, what can I cook for you? What can I make for you? So you have to sort of love what you're doing and want people to enjoy what you've created or produced or delivered to them. I don't see that happening here in some places. Now, we do have a strong food industry here, so we can take inspiration from innovators in that space. That's why entrepreneurs don't have to just be tech companies. They don't always get it. Well, and we can do a better job of highlighting actual achievement. So if things are really working, we should say so. People should know that. We should celebrate, elevate, recognize the efforts and so on. What I see here often is the same people getting recognized for doing pretty much the same things. I think it's disappointing. It doesn't inspire. Commitment and follow through, that's just a cultural question. What I see here, it goes to the ghosting. What I see in the greater Vegas area is a tendency, and now I'm not speaking for everybody. This is a statistical, if that, assessment. So anecdotal, really. I've not conducted a scientific survey, but it really happens a lot where people don't respect your time. They don't respect my time. So do for me, I will reply to your email if it suits me. And then if I feel like I've gotten what I needed, I may never talk to you again. And so I'll leave you hanging. This is problematic in general, but a commitment to the communication with others, to completing, you can call them favors, but it's not always about a client relationship with billing, invoices, deliverables. If you need to make it like that, then you're in a different part of the ecosystem, maybe a little predatory. But following through on just something as simple as communication or showing up, if you say you're going to, this is not a universal gap, but it is a non-zero gap. So it is present, and the ghosting part, again, the communication commitment, really needs work here. And this is not a Vegas only thing, again, but it is something. A lack of happiness. Now, this varies wildly, and the last reports that I could find were old. They were, I think, pre-pandemic. So if one were to find survey data on community happiness, on city level happiness, it's tricky to find, and it's usually based on employment. So if we were looking in the greater Vegas area at just that, we have the highest unemployment rate in the nation. We have among the highest egg prices, which are important. Egg prices can determine the outcome of elections, so they must be important. The egg prices in Vegas are astronomical because there are zero egg farms, zero chickens growing eggs, laying eggs, I guess. So there's no chicken farms. There are no egg farms. All eggs are imported. So you take the already high prices due to a shortage, supply and demand. Thank you, H5N1 bird flu, which took out, I want to say 150 million birds last year. So we just don't have as many workers laying eggs. So the eggs are in short supply, the demand remains high, the price goes up, and we don't have any locally, so you got to truck them in. And if gas prices or diesel or fuel prices are high, then our supply chain is long and expensive. So eggs are expensive. Housing prices have gone up even after the pandemic. There was already a cost of living increase in that regard. So high unemployment, high cost of living in general, groceries are up, fuel prices are up, rents and housing prices in general are up. So we could do some extrapolation and say that happiness might not be up. It will depend on who you're talking to. Some people don't worry about rent, don't worry about the price of eggs. Those people are probably happy. Depends. Insular communities, like I said, the culture doesn't lend itself to people reaching across their silos. So if you're in a group, especially geographically, you're in the north part of the city or the south part of the city, of the greater Vegas area, the different cities perhaps, you may never feel the need to engage with someone because, you're way over there. I will simply say the next Silicon Valley should be aware that the other Silicon Valley, the big one, was spread across 5 counties with a big giant body of water in the middle of it, and difficulty getting around with freeway congestion and Only recently have the two train systems come together, the BART system and the Caltrain system. The Caltrain system is finally electrified, so it's two electric trains that can now interface. So you can pretty much get around the Bay Area with public transit in that regard. The bus system could use some work. So, but that's a huge area. But in Silicon Valley, people understood the value of reaching across geographical silos or other silos to engage, because the value of communication and ideation, everybody gets it. It's tangible. So this is something we should be aware of. Transients, people in Vegas tend to come and go. I've talked about this previously. That's not something you can actually do something about, but you can, if you remain in contact with people. If people are better about communicating, they might actually tell you if they're leaving, and they might actually stay in contact. So if you want to collaborate with someone and they no longer live in Vegas, we have the technology to continue those communications, and we just have to instill that in people. So I don't think it's going to go away. I don't think people are going to automatically stay here more, but I think we can work around that if people are willing to communicate and they see the value proposition in that. From a structural standpoint, we're on page 10. See, we're I don't even think, I can't think of a word. We're running through these. That's not the word I was thinking of. So from a structural standpoint, the entrepreneurial direction, that's who's directing what. How are we going to get people going? I'll just say there's a strong desire. I'm going to read this part. There's a strong desire at the state government level to diversify the economy to provide resilience against another substantial downturn in tourism and hospitality revenue, think pandemic, in the greater Vegas area. So county and city governments, elected and staff, e.g. departments of economic development, urban and economic development, I think it is, and agencies such as the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, are attempting to build a tech-leaning startup environment. And then I go on from there with some items that are called out in different places in those contexts. Generally speaking, entrepreneurial direction is there's a push to get people to be tech entrepreneurs. And I would suggest that we have an established culture of entrepreneurialism that services hospitality, and then, of course, the fun economy. So gaming, professional sports now coming on strong, entertainment, conventions, and just general tourism. So locals fit in there, and people visiting, of course, the 40 million people visiting. So being entrepreneurial in the greater Vegas area could be tech. We don't really have the talent pool, no offense, or the educational underpinnings, although at the college level, those are there and perhaps improving. I never went to UNLV, so I can't speak from first person, but there's potential there. But our high school, junior high school, I will say it again, I've said it many times before, and I will continue to do so, around 7th grade is the time to really enable any young person who has even a slight proclivity towards entrepreneurialism, make that available and really open up the notion of trying out ideas, seeing what you're interested in. Junior high school is a plus or minus, somewhere in there, but somewhere around age 12, 7th grade, junior high school, switching classes, different electives, after school activities. You're seeing young people get into robotics or sports or crafts and creative work, right? Just anything they're interested in doing. We should be absolutely enabling and encouraging those pursuits rather than teaching employees. So entrepreneurial direction will take some educational infrastructure development in the younger years. It will take some mentoring. It will take some good examples. And again, recognizing and celebrating accomplishments, starting with younger people. I always say, if you live in the greater Vegas area and you are looking to figure out, hey, did any young people participate in hackathons or who did the Congressional App Challenge for Vegas? Well, good luck. If you want to find out if somebody got murdered or shot, or who won a jackpot at a casino, or which buildings are being torn down, or we got you. Our local media here is fine with that stuff. But if you want to talk about success stories here in our Greater Vegas ecosystem, you got some work to do to find that stuff. We can change that. That's one of the lowest hanging pieces of fruit. And I've mentioned before the Muni Bits initiative over at Innovate for Vegas Foundation. Access to capital, that's a given. There's probably a little bit of controversy over the current state of affairs. My information is a little bit old on this, but from what I understood 2 years ago, there is money locally for investment, but there's low confidence. So you need to instill confidence. But unfortunately, we keep having awards and a presentation of our visible innovation culture that's repetitive. It's the same people. They're not really doing. I'm not trying to judge. I'm just telling you the reality is this. If the same people are always making an appearance, but they're not launching their startups, or they're not demonstrating that things are happening, they're more like aspirational or maybe nascent. That doesn't say we're moving. It says we want to move. Now that is in itself not a bad thing, but that does not attract capital. So if access to capital is a problem, that might continue to be a problem unless we start demonstrating some bootstrap initiative and a recognition of people who are actually starting. And this is the point of the second startup scene, which I talked about in the previous episode and a little bit in the episode before that. So the last few episodes have been Initiative 2025, go figure. So this dovetails nicely into the local media challenge, which is our existing local media focused on two main things. One is crime, politics, real estate, big business, buildings being torn down or built, professional sports and controversy, lawsuits about Formula One, business interruptions, and so on. So it's not about innovation so much as day-to-day grind. Our local content creators, so our independent media, if you like, mostly talking about tourism related. Why? Because 40 million people. So you want 40 million people to see your Instagram, your TikTok, your YouTube shorts, maybe listen to your podcast or you watch your YouTube presentations. So here you have people looking at the latest restaurants, the latest activities, the latest fun things to do in the fun economy. That is totally understandable. That's how capitalism works. But then our local media is not talking about that thing everybody thinks is going, well, not everybody, the thing that people think is going to be the future here. So if we say, hey, we're going to be the next Silicon Valley, really? Where does it say that? On LinkedIn. I've spoke about this in episode 85. Vegas should be the next Vegas. If you aren't seeing mentions about local innovation, and how about announcements about startups, about launches, about new products, about so on and so on. If you're not seeing this stuff in the paper next to that normal daily news, because it should be considered normal daily news. Hey, we're a city of innovation. We should be seeing innovation. It should be making the news on the regular. This is something I talked about briefly in episode 85. News about startups was in the San Jose Mercury and other papers in the Bay Area, right? It wasn't hidden away so that you had to know the right person to ask to see what's going on. So this represents an immature culture when it comes to innovation. Our expectations have been set regarding the news that we expect to hear about and learn about and to be pursued. So if you want to make the news as a startup here, good luck. That's all I can say, good luck. And so that has to change. And if we are not able to advertise our own accomplishments in the area of innovation, unless you're rich, now if you're Mark Andreessen or if you're Teddy Lau or if you're a few other people, we'll get you in the paper. We'll do an article about how you're going to have this meetup, or that you're going to try to draw investment here, or you're going to have people come in here and gentrify the area, raise the rents for everyone for the sake of you bringing talent into an otherwise shallow talent pool. Those are not solving problems. They are only extracting value. So local media needs to cover the whole story all the time so people have some idea what's going on in their city in this regard. So I think this is a huge problem. It can be addressed. It'll take time, but people have to take an active interest. Communication, discovery, I've already talked about this. So the cultural component needs to change. Which comes first, the cultural or the structural? Good question. So if we have better tools for discovery and communication, does that make people want to do it? Not sure. But if people want to do it and there are no tools, will they strive to find better tools? So far, no. So could be a chicken and egg problem. We'll have to find out. Housing is just going to be a problem in Vegas. It's more of a problem in Reno, or it was. So as rents and mortgages and housing prices in general tend to be high and tend to stay high and might even go higher due to supply and demand, it's going to be tricky. So if you want to keep, the royal you, so anyone, if you want to keep the fun economy intact and you price the population in the service economy, in the hospitality industry, if you price them out, they can't live here anymore, they'll leave. And we saw that during the pandemic at a 25 to 40% rent cost of living increase, right? So rents went up. Did they come back down? Not generally speaking. So price people out. You can see the scenario in Austin. Austin, another city that thinks it's going to be the next Silicon Valley, sort of. So I've already talked about this as well in a previous episode, that Austin changed its character, priced people out that made the character what it was, that keep Austin weird. So Austin today, very different. And Vegas could do that. You can price out all the hospitality folks and people that make the fun economy go for the sake of having tech bros move in, buy houses, production by street, buy houses for cash, drive the prices up of real estate even more. The list goes on. So challenges there. Housing will continue to be a challenge. Local resources, we have water to contend with. We have enough, I guess, just barely. An educated population, so we have to have people that are interested and interesting. We need to have that culture of innovation that takes time to develop. I talked about this in 85 as well. Silicon Valley culture has been emerging organically since the late 1800s. Probably didn't know that. I didn't know it either at the time when I was creating that episode. I would have said 1944 as usual. Frederick Terman became the Dean of Engineering at Stanford after some good work as a radar engineer during the World War II. Working on the East Coast, he moved back home to the Bay Area, often called the father of Silicon Valley. I don't know if he calls himself that. So yeah, episode 85, check it out. But it turns out Leland Stanford was selling picks and shovels to miners from 1849, gold rush. So he took his money and invested it in a little college in the orchards of Stanford. Where are we going to put your college, Mr. Stanford? How about in Stanford? There you go. So yeah, the history of that area is actually a little bit more nuanced than people have you believe. And if you believe that 2008 is the time to investigate Silicon Valley, you are hoping to stand on the shoulders of giants. And their giants here were more interested in evading taxes and collecting gambling winnings and maybe skimming. So totally different culture. It will take time to change it. We're on page 14. We're getting there. There's inequity, and I've really run through these. So at some point, I'll construct a better document that's more presentable as we start reevaluating some of these things. Inequity, it's a general issue. There's access based on friend networks and halo effects. So people that I've encountered here are very quick to be excited about celebrity and wealth. If you have money, especially if you made money from a startup, you're instantly in the group, you're in the in crowd. If you are a celebrity, very exciting. Mark Wahlberg, Ben Horowitz, Mark Andreessen. The founder of the woman who did, yeah, those are very exciting. How about, hey, I'm working on a startup. Yeah, who are you? People are treated very differently here. It's not based on merit or potential. It's based on celebrity and wealth. What are you going to do for me? What are you going to bring to the table, etc.? So you got to have something to get something. This is it's very apparent from the downtown project days. Access to the inner circles of the downtown projects, access to local businesses and government contacts, gated through a friend network, and by implication, old and new money. So that's my opinion. Some people may find it different, but you then would have to ask, were you on the in crowd or on the inside? Or were you in the out crowd on the outside? And I think that demarcation would become clear. So with a lack of specific and knowledgeable direction and an ethos aimed at symbiotic elevation of the ecosystem, the classic "it is who you know" social dynamic may undo gains in the health of the ecosystem as a whole. I wrote that. Yeah, if we're going to be the next Silicon Valley, we got to be more open. We're not going to be the next Silicon Valley, but if we pretend we're going to be, or how about this, be a better Vegas? Be open to the idea that someone with an idea might have a good idea, even if nobody knows their name. It's a cultural issue, but the structure of it is simply you have access here based on what you bring, because the value proposition, the structure of our culture. So yeah, it's a cultural issue, but so maybe this kind of could be both, just like communication and discovery. We're just not set up for true innovation unless you're opening a new kind of restaurant or bar. If you're in the hospitality or entertainment part of the ecosystem, I believe it's very different. And this is one of the reasons why the Genius Roundtable for the second cohort will aim to have people who are real entrepreneurs, not just solopreneurs, which was one of the failings of the first cohort. So we need different viewpoints. We need different angles. We need different views of the facets. I would posit that it's very different opening a novel restaurant here when nobody knows who you are versus opening a novel startup company when nobody knows who you are. The last mile is a problem. There's this marketing campaign I think it's still going. Move to Vegas, bring your startup to Vegas, become a local, move your employees, bring your company here, especially if you're Google. So this is the structural part, I suppose. If you're Google or Amazon, cities want you to move to their city. Move to Henderson, which Amazon and Google have. Move to the city of Las Vegas. Move to North Las Vegas. They really want the dollar spend. They want the boost in their local economies that come from big companies. That doesn't mean that they're going to be as excited to have small companies. So startups are small companies. So the startup better be backed by a well-known rich person, a source of venture capital, so that you can tout that. So the structural component, I suppose, would be, and remember, I wrote this 2 years ago, so now that I'm reflecting on it, I would say the structural component is just this notion that there has to be name recognition for the purpose of marketing. If you have a population of startups that begin to find success, that is also something you can market. But here there's that running for the name, so you can talk about and tout Google, Andreessen, Horowitz. You want to talk about things that will excite people today, not potential. And unfortunately, if you want to talk about innovation, it is a lot of potential. It's a bummer. So the last mile is when you encourage people to move here, then you kind of leave them hanging, unless you're a celebrity or wealthy. So then what? So we had some ideas. I was pursuing the Startup Resource Center, which was inspired by an expatriate center I was in Eindhoven. And you can find these in different parts of the world. I'm new to this place and I'm from another country. I don't necessarily speak the language, so they kind of help you get up and running. So my theory was we should have, if you're going to say come to Vegas and have your startup, the Downtown Project had a similar attitude. They got a cross section of startups. They had entrepreneurs doing restaurants and bars and retail and services and some tech and so on. So they had a smattering. What they did not have was those last mile services. So more than one person. I spoke to many people contemporaneously. They were kind of left hanging. Good luck. And the way I describe it now is it's kind of the same thing. Come to Vegas with your startup. Okay, you're here. Okay, good. Good luck. The luck of the Vegas. So the Startup Resource Center would have aimed to be the beginning, the access point, the gateway to what I was then calling the first mile. So last mile is usually, if you're delivering packages or something, it's that last mile where you got to roll a truck out to a house or an apartment. So the last mile running cable or fiber optic cable or water, electricity. So it's where you actually have to get down to individual destinations, not a bulk office or warehouse where you can manage multiple things. Tons and tons of goods and services and whatnot can all be handled at a central location. But once you got to go out to where the customer is usually, It's that last mile. So the same sense with entrepreneurs, you can say we have a startup city, we have a downtown project, but then the last mile is, okay, I'm here, and now please help me. You can't talk about a llama-shaped footprint downtown. You can't talk about the upsides of moving your startup to Vegas. Now it's a person or a company that you're working with, and often it is good luck. So the first mile would be saying, okay, well, here's a whole bunch of resources. Here are some starting points. Here are some services that are available. Here are some curated services that we've put together. I was calling it the startup in a box. So got a lot of traction, but no real interest, if that makes sense, because that's Vegas. I'm not rich or a celebrity, so who cares? But I did do my time in Silicon Valley, and most people here haven't, so ponder that. The ecosystem really needs some entrepreneurs in residence, so people who actually take an active interest in seeing the ecosystem become more vibrant, more healthy, more develop more potential. So mentors, if you will, but entrepreneurs in residence are real entrepreneurs who are here, and they can help you with what you're doing. An EIR in the greater Vegas area might be in the restaurant industry or hospitality in general. They might be in the bar industry, which is separate with licensing and so on. They might be in the services business. They might be in the tech sector. They might be, doing a variety of things. They might be in a solopreneur services business, so they can tell you all about operating a no employee business in Greater Vegas. And I believe it's 82% of small business are employ no one. So that's in line with the national 80% number. So a lot of small businesses are not, I don't even know if it's 80% of small businesses or all businesses, but it's, and you can play around with statistics to make them say what you want. But the bottom line is a lot of companies don't have employees. So that's fine. So we should have a component of our EIR cadre who are familiar with that. How do I start a business in the greater Vegas area? What happens when this happens? Who do I talk to about funding? Who do I talk to about SBIR or is it STTR funding and interfacing with the university? Or how do I work with the veterans? Is there a veteran and entrepreneur organization? I'm a veteran. Who should I talk to? I'm myself not a veteran. So there's all sorts of things that we could enable with an access point that is clearly advertised as offering these services and these pieces of information and the resources you need to be successful in your first mile journey. But I think we're still in the last mile mode where it's good luck. Oh, just go talk to these people or go find this pro. Go to this thing on Saturday. It won't help you, but it's you can check a box. So essentially, and that's the last thing on the list. So essentially, everything I wrote 2 years ago, and I didn't pre-read this, so I just went through this with you just now. Everything that I wrote in there still has room for improvement or implementation. I really think a starting point would be really, really useful access to information. So local media, just like I said, in Silicon Valley back in the day, the San Jose Mercury, the paper of record for the South Bay, which was where Silicon Valley really was, it moved up the peninsula along with housing prices. But for a time, San Jose called itself the heart of Silicon Valley. So the San Jose Mercury News, front page articles now and then, Apple was getting mentioned, startups doing this and that. People were actually curious about when companies went under, when they went out of business, when they got acquired. So all these things would make the news. And because it was happening in Silicon Valley, people were actually finding out about it because they were I was in the industry, right? So of course I'm interested and curious, but it's what's happening in your city. So the greater Vegas area, just the cultural components, the infrastructure we have in place to share information with our local media entities as they exist today, the focus on tourism in general, especially with our local new media creators, our influencers, our YouTubers and Instagrammers and all that. So everything is geared for either the character of Vegas, gaming, sports, the fun economy, and the downsides, crime, and people being hit by cars. That's a thing here. So pedestrian car collisions, criminal activities, people being shot, people being assaulted, home invasions. So these are the things that make like front page news. And then every once in a while there's a real estate deal or something noteworthy, but we really don't focus enough on local innovation, local entrepreneurialism. So that needs to change, and that starts with local media. But everything else I talked about here, that ghosting culture, has to change. You simply cannot claim to be a community. You cannot claim there is a scene, the startup scene, if you have people that are completely transactional, and the culture here is leans towards transactional. I have posited that it is contagious, that even people who are not of the mokusatsu mindset will eventually get there because they are on the receiving end. Like, yeah, I emailed so-and-so and they never got back to me. Yeah, it's Vegas. I myself have become a convert of sorts. I follow the ghost protocol, except when I don't. So I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But if I don't hear from you in a month, you're not going to hear from me again. That's not productive, but it is a consideration of personal time, because again, people don't always value the time of others if it does not suit them. And again, transactional solipsistic, you could say, transactional solipsism, 2 problems in one. So that's where I think I'll leave it for today. I think I covered some pretty good bases. The focus of the Genius Roundtable Cohort 2 will be these sorts of things, but by no means only these sorts of things. It's essentially going to look at how we close gaps, how we fill in the missing pieces, how we enable that first mile, and we don't focus on tech. Tech is part, but not the whole. So even though I'm a tech person, I completely appreciate the notion that if you're a food truck owner, you should be successful here, or at least be given the opportunity to be successful, not have sort of systemic barriers remain for no good reason but to service special interests in a competing, read that as brick and mortar restaurants and the American, the American Restaurant Association? Restaurant Owners Association? Something like that. It's a national organization. They don't like food trucks, so you automatically lose. That should not be the case in an entrepreneurial area where there is so much opportunity for those willing to go for it. We should be enabling and encouraging that, and we should not be resting our patience and our what's the word I'm looking for? We shouldn't be waiting on the city or cities to take action. Entrepreneurs should not be waiting for other people. They should be working around problems presented by other people, but they should be solving problems. That's half the game. An entrepreneur is somebody with an idea but no money, as they say. You should not be waiting for someone else to come up with the idea. The money part can be tricky, bootstrapping, venture capital, angel funds, etc. But if you have an idea, it should be execution. It should not be, hey, someone else should fix this. That's what you're doing. That's why you're an entrepreneur. That's why I am too. And that seems like a good place to end today's episode. Thank you for listening. I apologize again for my voice has been really wonky today and yesterday, but we'll see. Hopefully I was audible. Thank you for listening and take care. Bye-bye.